It's that time again. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Next Gen Live. I'm Rory Sauter. Joining me is George Landreth. We have Greg Merck, Tony Rodriguez, Bill Muckler, Jim Ostrowski, Brian Perez. Gentlemen, fellas. It's been a long week in the media, a lot to address, a lot to establish, headline after headline. Greg Merck, I'm going to go to you first.
Well, I think big things for me on the domestic front, of course, is Donald Trump being removed from the ballot in Colorado, emboldening other states to do the same thing. I think this will be fast-tracked to the Supreme Court. Nevertheless, it's an outrageous decision, obviously politically motivated, not rooted in the facts, not rooted in the Constitution. But as my progressive template goes, blank's never about blank. It's always about fundamental change and accomplishing an objective. This is not about constitutional rights or protecting the democracy. This is about removing Donald Trump from the ballot, because Joe Biden is completely incapable of winning this thing without the Democrat Party stealing the election and getting rid of Donald Trump. Then there's the Harvard saga with the Harvard president, multiple allegations of plagiarism. Of course, a much different standard for those who fall into the DEI category. So, it's going to be an uphill battle to get rid of this person who, if it were you or I or anybody else outside the protected classes, we would have been removed immediately. If we're students or in any kind of graduate program, we would have been expelled immediately. Multiple infractions and plagiarism. But there's standard issue for these kind of universities and their adherence to woke policies. And then, of course, on the international front, China's economy is imploding. The real estate market is getting crushed. Every 5% decline in real estate for the Chinese savers is $2.7 trillion in U.S. So from 15 to 25%, there have been declines across the board throughout that region. It's siphoning trillions of dollars out of the people's wealth, and 70% of Chinese wealth is in real estate. So it's going to have a contagion effect, and it's really going to ripple across into the United States. And we're already suffering from our own problems, our own bleak outlook in 2024, despite all of the Goldilocks scenario individuals, the talking heads on the business channels that don't want to tell us that there's doom and gloom on the horizon, despite the fact that there is. And with a slowing U.S. economy, a slowing Chinese economy, it's going to ripple across the globe. And I don't see 2024 as an optimistic year economically.
Yeah, and there was just a financial expert, a guy that has a good track record, that said 2024 is going to be one of the worst years that this country has ever seen. And I've been saying this for over a year, that, this crash is going to be like no other. And you have too, Merck.
That's right. Yeah. And if it doesn't happen in 2024, it's going to begin in 2024. These things, we cannot really predict the timing of them, but when we see the trends are not good. And people want to talk about other times in history. We've never been $34 trillion in debt. We've never been spending $2 to $2.5 trillion more than we take in. Household debt has never been $1.3 trillion. All debt in households has never been $5 trillion. Corporate debt, bankruptcies, zombie companies, all of them on the rise. Real estate on the falling. Having to refinance U.S. debt, trillions of dollars in the coming years at 5% interest rate is unbearable. Commercial banking is about to again reach the headlines when they have to pay back the Federal Reserve loans from last March, and they're not able to do it. So all of these things, it really damned if they do, damned if they don't. The Federal Reserve, with respect to raising rates or lowering rates, if they lower rates, they're going to reignite inflation. If they keep rates the same, or heaven forbid they raise rates, the economy will implode even faster. So neither scenario is a good one. And if they leave rates the same, we're going to see a steady decline. There's no good outcome for what's going on. There might be some hope. There might be some light at the end of the tunnel if there was even the discussion of austerity in the federal government and real federal government cuts. But that's simply not going to happen. And the Federal Reserve is going to have to monetize that debt at much higher interest rates.
Yeah, very
Greg
well
just
said.
hit on everything. Merck hit on everything already. That was
Yeah, amen.
That's the
Very
end of the show.
well said. Yeah, Jim Atrosky, go ahead.
That's the end of the show. I think you covered it.
I agree. Yeah, well, I mean, damn, that's good.
Yeah, no, well, my wife and I, in spite of what Greg said, we're trying to improve the economy. We got our Christmas tree, and we bought a 2022 new car today. But
Nice.
yeah, one of the interesting things that's happening, I study the debt. You know, I try to keep track of what's going on with the debt because it's part of my new scorecard, GOPscorecard.com, where I'm trying to rank the Republican Party after 1 year.
They always talk about doing something and they never do anything about it.
Well, and I'm trying to use readily available statistics, and one of the statistics is debt held by the public, which excludes interagency debt, which I think is a little fuzzy, but I think the debt's gone up like $2.5 trillion under the GOP. And I know they're going to say, oh, you know, we were stuck with prior budgets and all bullshit. Okay, it's your fault. They could have stopped it, and they didn't. But one of the interesting things that's happening, and what I hear from my libertarian economist gurus, is that the Fed, and I'm a big believer in direct action. I think politics is all rigged and bullshit. Hasn't worked since 1800 to reduce the size of government. But one of the things that does work is direct action. And I urge people, I know it's easy for me to say because I'm not a millionaire and I have no money to invest. Don't buy T-bills. You know what? People aren't buying T-bills. Apparently,
hey, the email stuff, who's ever doing that?
Yeah. Uh-oh. Somebody's getting a lot of emails.
We'll come. I think it's Bill Muckler. We'll come right back to his screen.
Bill's fan mail.
What I'm hearing,
Bill's got a big fan club.
What I'm hearing from multiple people who know more about this stuff than I do is that the government's having trouble selling T-bills, and that, you know, if we don't lend money to this beast, they're going to have to stop growing, and that's a lot more effective than elections, because how many elections have failed to produce results for what I call the liberty movement? So that's what I'm working on. I read the section in the insurrection decision that addresses Trump's alleged insurrection. So I'm ready to talk about that a little bit with some of the other panelists.
Yeah, speak on that for a second.
Well, I mean, one of the things, not in any detail, but one of the things I noticed is very early in the decision, the court quotes a so-called historian named Eric Foner. Well, I know a little bit about Eric Foner because I'm a friend of Tom DiLorenzo, who's written a lot about the Civil War, and Foner's a big Civil War historian. Well, he's also a Marxist. So I think that kind of gives away a clue as to how this court is trending. I just thought that the decision talking about how there was an insurrection and Trump's alleged involvement in the insurrection was very weak, very ideologically motivated, and it wouldn't really stand up to any real analysis. But I think what's happened to the left-wing judiciary is it's become, I think it always was ideological. In fact, years ago, before the current sort of left-wing resurgence, which I date from about 2014, the Ferguson riots and so on, and the Obama administration, I think the judiciary has always been political in this country. But at this point, Democratic judges are just purely 100% ideologues. And that's basically how the decision reads. And I did not read the section about where they concluded that after concluding that Trump engaged in insurrection by making a few speeches, they concluded that his speech was not protected by the First Amendment, which is obviously absurd. Everything they're really complaining about what Trump did. Trump didn't do anything that day. He gave a speech and he put out a few tweets. It's all pure First Amendment protected speech. And there was no insurrection. What I'd like to ask about the insurrection is three questions. What was the plan for the insurrection? Who agreed upon the plan? And how was the plan executed? These are three basic trial lawyer summation to the jury questions. I don't think any of those questions has been answered. So that's just my initial reaction to the decision.
Well said. Yeah. Tony, go ahead.
Well, I have a question reference to that. There's a lot of rumors on the internet and all that. So let's just say that the Supreme Court doesn't do their job and they don't overturn the decision. How does that affect Trump in the election? Or does it affect them at all?
Well, I think if the Supreme Court affirms Colorado, any state whose judiciary is controlled by the Democrats, and I'm going to say off the top of my head, that might be 27 states, they'll immediately knock Trump off the ballot. So you're going to have these days you can't really speak freely in this country.
Right.
That would be a huge mistake by them. I actually have a sort of a Machiavellian theory that the Colorado judges, they know they're going to be reversed by the Supreme Court, and they're really just setting up a campaign issue. Oh, it's Clarence Thomas, and a corrupt Supreme Court siding with Donald Trump again. I hope I'm right about that Machiavellian theory, because if the Supreme Court actually does knock Trump off the ballot, that could be the start of a lot of things that I don't even want to talk about on live internet.
Right.
And Tony, they're trying to ban him on the ballot in California and a few other states now.
Yep. When are the what I want to ask real quick is, when are the Republicans going to have the balls to take Joe Biden or any other communist off the ballot in their state? What's going on? Like, this is ridiculous. Have some balls, GOP.
And Tony, your reaction, Tony?
Well, I spent 3 hours with the GOP today.
Yeah.
And mainly because we disagree on especially California, right? Like in California, abortion is legal. It's in the Constitution. And so I don't want to make that part of my campaign, and they have a problem with that. And I don't not because of my personal belief, because I can't win that battle right now in California. And we have to change the Constitution. In order to change that, we got to have more Republicans, get voted in. So to me, that battle is just useless to fight in California at this point. We got bigger fish to fry, right? So the party's split everywhere, whether it's California, Florida, the party's completely split. You got people calling rhinos, and I mean, we're not together at all. We're just not. And in order to win the fight, we have to do it together. I mean, that's really the bottom line.
And what's your response to the whole debt thing? I know you talk about that quite a bit.
Well, I mean, it boils down to, unless we have people like Trump get elected, we're never going to even begin to resolve the issues.
Right.
I mean, the cost of living in California is, I heard today, it's 60% higher than the rest of the nation.
Yep.
60%. There's no way we can recover from that at this point.
The median cost of a house in the state of California, almost $800,000.
Wow.
The median in the state of California. That's number two. The most expensive place to live in the United States for real estate, for houses, Hawaii. The median was like over 800.
Yep. So, I mean, it's an uphill battle, especially in California. And, even the party, just part of the process on endorsing people is a joke in California. Just a joke.
Yeah. George Landreth, your thoughts on everything so far?
Well, one of the things I found very interesting was reading the case that came out of Colorado. And I've taught constitutional law, and I can guarantee you, if one of these Supreme Court justices turned that in as a paper they'd fail the class. That's how bad it is. And I just, it's unbelievable. I feel embarrassed for them because it takes a special kind of stupid to write the things that they wrote. And the funny thing is, it's not just me saying that as a conservative. There are scholars, legal scholars, who come from the left side of the spectrum who have also said, holy cow, this is crazy. An example would be Jonathan Turley has said that this decision is the most anti-democratic decision he's read in his lifetime, and also pointed out that there are, well, that it's launching us in a trajectory or direction that is really harmful to our country. So it's not just that it's wrong, because sometimes, you know, a court case, they can get the facts wrong, they can get the law wrong, they can make mistakes, and that may be an injustice to the people involved, but it can be fixed and it doesn't destroy society writ large. This decision, if not corrected, will destroy our democratic republic. We will no longer have the constitutional democratic republic that we thought we had. So it's a big, big deal. And these justices, not only do they not deserve to be justices because they're A, morons, or B, they're just political activists. But even then, they're also morons, because if you want to be a political activist, you could at least disguise it better. They didn't even bother. Why? Because they're not that bright. And so I hold them in the highest level of contempt intellectually, from a character perspective, from a perspective of having violated their oath of office. They've actually, they're all four of those are felons. And let me tell you what I mean. You say, how can you say that? It's just opinion. If you, under federal law, if you use the power that you have in government, it's called acting under the color of state law, to violate the constitutional rights of your fellow citizens, that is a crime under our civil rights legislation, for which you can go to jail. And every one of those four justices needs to go to jail. I don't think that's going to happen, right, but it should. And if this were a more just world, if this were a world where we followed the law and respected the law, that's what we do. Because that's the only way to be sure it doesn't continue to happen. I guarantee you throw four justices in jail for violating the constitutional rights of their fellow Americans, and you'll have a lot fewer judges willing to step out on that crazy platform. I've also argued that the Senate should every year cull through all the various federal judges. And the judges that are the most frequently overturned, like there was one year, I can remember years ago, I read an article about a guy, I forget his name now, but he was in the Ninth Circuit. He had a total of 5 cases before the Supreme Court in 1 year. He lost all of them being overturned, and all of them he lost 9-0. So he had 45 opportunities to get one judge. And this is back when the court was probably leaned a little bit to the left. He couldn't get one judge to vote for him out of 45 tries. That tells you this is a judge who's pathetic, and he should be removed from office, because you can't be that wrong that often and not even be trying, or you're not qualified. So the point is, if our Senate would start doing its job and start impeaching just 2 or 3 judges each year, the most outlandish, crazy left-wing kooks on the federal bench, that would cause them to start behaving better. They'd go, okay, there's accountability now. That's the whole point. There's supposed to be checks and balances. I do not want a court that does not have to answer to the law, to the Constitution. Sometimes people say things like, well, you want to have judicial independence. I do. I want them to be independent from political pressures, but not from the law, and certainly not from the Constitution. I want the Constitution to bind them tight, because without that, then all they are is dictators. So,
yeah. And George, you know this area very well. You know this realm of law and these corrupt judges and how radical things have become. Could they succeed in a lot of these blue states with banning him from the ballot and taking the election away? I mean, your thoughts?
Well, I think the law is pretty clear that the Supreme Court's going to have to flip all this. The question, in my opinion, is mostly, will it be 9-0 or will it be 6-3? I'd like for it to be 9-0 because I would like to believe that even the left-wing judges understand. And I don't think anybody here will be shocked to find out that I see no value in Joe Biden's presidency. And if he were to be impeached or removed from office, that'd probably be a plus because he's been a train wreck. But I don't want a court. I wouldn't want a court in Texas, for example, to rule that because of the southern border, he can't run for office because that was an insurrection by, so forth. I'm like, that's an issue. I hope voters will remember that when they go to the polls and vote and not support him. But I'm not really comfortable empowering courts to decide who we get to vote for or not in this way. And so, to be blunt, I would hope that the liberal judges realize we can play this game too, and we control more states than you do. So do you really want to open up Pandora's box for that? And, but I'd like to get us back to a time and a place where the public decides who the president is.
Yep.
This was not even a real trial. Trump didn't even have the opportunity to call those. But what you see, this beauty,
he
was
not found guilty of insurrection because that was not a trial. It's just the court just declared it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, with people like this pretty lady on my screen, Bobby, if you can see what she is, with her pink hair and her orange hair and her red hair. Okay, her name's Hillary Rudy. She's one of the election officials that was testifying against Donald Trump. So you can reasonably expect the outcome when they're just listening to people like this, whose mind is made up. This was not a legal decision, most definitely not a constitutional decision. It was a personal political decision. And in the end, it will fail. And I'll tell you, if it doesn't fail, then as bad as America is economically, socially, there will be extraordinary unrest and it will get extremely ugly.
Bill Muckler.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I guess following up on the same subject. Yesterday, we had a group luncheon here at my association, and I was sitting across the table from one of the guys, pardon me, and he wanted to know what I talked about on my show. And I said, well, I talked about Trump being taken off the ballot in Colorado, and the guy sitting next to me, who's a retired government employee and a strong leftist, he was just gleeful. He was gloating. Hey, this is it. We've won the election. Trump is gone. He'll be in jail. And, so this whole thing, I think, was just to gin up the base. And it was also to get the Democrats united because there's 15 states now that have submitted these lawsuits or whatever the heck they are to their Supreme Court, state Supreme Courts to remove Trump from the ballot. But really, they're not really removing Trump from the ballot in this Colorado case, unless I'm completely wrong on it. They're removing him from being in the primary election, I believe.
That's right.
I don't understand how they can do that because the primary is a Republican thing. It's not a federal thing. Am I right or wrong on this?
Yeah, that's right. And that's why the GOP in Colorado is going to move to a caucus system where it won't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Greg. Yeah, that's the next point I was going to make. So anyway, Tony was saying, the Democrats, boy, they stick together. It's like they've got a red D, tattooed on their foreheads. Now, what I'm really interested in seeing is if this goes to the Supreme Court, will Chief Justice Roberts take it on? Because he can say, we're not going to take this case on. He could do that and say, we're not getting involved in politics, or we're not getting involved in decision making, and all these lame excuses that he makes. But let's say he does take it on, and what George is bringing up, the vote. If it's not 9-0, that is definite proof that the court is ideologically based. That because they keep saying, no, we don't vote according to our ideology and our politics. We vote according to the Constitution. But why then are all the votes 5-4 or 6-3 then?
Yeah.
Why? Because the Democrats vote with the Democrats, with the liberal left, the Marxists.
Mhm.
So if this doesn't go 9-0, that's definitely proof that the Supreme Court is corrupt just as well, as far as I'm concerned. And I think a lot of people in the United States feel the same way, that the court's already corrupted. And what happens if somebody like Roberts decides that he's going to vote with the left, and let's say Amy Coney Barrett decides she's going to vote for left because she has not been sturdy conservative? What happens then?
I don't think that people like Roberts.
This is, to me, is the most intriguing part of this whole issue.
I think Roberts, who's uberly concerned with public opinion and what this would mean, I don't think they have a choice but to take on the case. And I think that the magnitude of them upholding the decision would be so profound that I do not believe that they would want to uphold the decision, but they would rather want to overturn it. I don't think that they did the same thing when it came to Obamacare. They didn't want to meddle in what they saw was a legislative issue, that the Congress should deal with it. You made it. You need to take it away and fix it, and we're not going to do that. So I don't really see the Supreme Court, punting on this. I think they're going to take it up, and I think they're going to have to overturn it, or else there'll be extreme national unrest. The decision, it's not just a political one. It is a huge national issue and a national security issue at that.
Yeah, and Greg, I agree with everything you're saying. The point I'm trying to make is I'm really intrigued by waiting to see what does really play out. I'm thinking it's going to go 9-0. I think it almost has to go 9-0, but who knows?
Now, I can't see Keegan and Sotomayor making the decision for Trump. These are ideologues, extreme ideologues, and the other one, Katanji. I don't see them, going against or
I think
Katanji
is still trying to figure out the difference between a man and a woman. So this is a difficult for her.
Exactly.
Far too complex, way too much history. I think you'll be expecting too much.
Yep.
Ryan, what are your thoughts so far, man?
Well, Merck and George hit on the topics very well. But I would go, so Lindsey, you have Lindsey Graham saying that Biden hasn't participated in any of the Hunter Biden business dealings, but yet they all impeached President Trump just for inquiring about that. He got impeached so quick that by the time he even got notice of it, they already impeached him, but yet they have not done anything to Joe Biden. It's so, all this stuff, all the Marxism and communism that everybody's been talking about is so blatant. There is no way the Supreme Court goes 9-0 on the decision to have President Trump off or on the ballot. All the communist states, you touched on it, Rory, are going to try to do that because they are scared of President Trump being on the ballot. They know that he knows the truth about what's going on, and I believe they know that they're going to be done if he's on the when he gets reelected finally again for the third time. What I don't like is our GOP doesn't have any balls. All they talk about is they do talking, no action. Governor DeSantis, Abbott, they should be removing Biden or any communist Marxist off the ballot in the Republican states. This is ridiculous. And as far as the lady in the who took Dr. Swan's information, the Harvard president, if that was a white man, he would have been gone already. But because they all put all these ideology people on all in the DOJ as our judges, this is the whole reason why our system is crashing and crumbling, is because you have ideology rather than merit-based people being put in place. And President Trump should be on the ballot, and if people want to elect him, they elect him, which they will. And it's so disgusting on what's going on. As Merck is a veteran, and I am a veteran, who swore an oath to protect and defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and for people to not be pissed off and to fight for your constitutional God-given rights and protect this land, y'all should be ashamed of yourselves, each and every single person tuning in. What are you doing? How are you sitting by, allowing all this to happen? I know people, I talk to people every day. I'm out and about with all of us everyday people. They're struggling right now for food, buying food. I got people talking about they can't even buy toys for their kids. Well, you know what? Stand up. If you stood up against all this communism, Marxism, things wouldn't be this bad. But like Merck even said, it's going to get crazy and wild in 2024, baby. What are you going to do then? Is it going to be too late before you start to respond? This is like Merck and George touched on it so eloquently and well. I don't even need to really go on it, but it is so mind-boggling on the laziness and the entitlement of people, and how I realize how do you fight it? Like President Trump said, peacefully and patriotically on January 6th. And we had FBI informants obviously in there destroying and actually enticing. I don't still think it's an insurrection when people come into the house that they own. The Capitol is owned by we the people. And they walked in there. Some people did destroy some things. So yeah, you should probably be punished for that. But what about all the insurrections going on the past few weeks over Israel and Gaza? Nobody's been punished then. Why aren't the Republicans doing anything about that? We have real insurrections going on, and yet they don't do anything. I'm sick and tired of people saying, oh, well, it's the left that's doing it. No, the Republicans suck too. They aren't doing anything about it. They have no balls, no spine, and we have no justice. It's a two-tier justice system. Biden has sold our country out, along with a lot of other global elites. I think the only way is through the military, through tribunals, because these guys have committed treason. And they all, and for most of us, we know what treason means. It means publicly hang or whatever you, whatever. I don't want to go too far into it because I know I want this show to stay on, I don't want it to be off YouTube or whatever. But, all these justices, all these judges who are doing this to President Trump. But we saw this with Jesus Christ when he was on the earth. He was persecuted for speaking the truth as well. I'm not trying to compare President Trump or any human to Jesus Christ. I'm just showing comparisons because when Jesus walked the earth, he spoke the truth. He spoke what our God-given rights, our love, and yet he was nailed to the cross. He was beaten, and yet that is what they want to do. They want to use President Trump as an example, and the people of January 6th as political prisoners to scare the people from uproaring and for standing up against our government, because it is the duty of the people to hold our government accountable. And until that happens, we're going to keep facing all this stuff. It is crazy, and we have to get back to merit-based principles, common sense, and we have to secure our southern border. That is the main issue. The Republicans just gave every concession to the communists, and they said they were going to work on having border policy, but they didn't. They're going to send money over to Israel and Ukraine, and yet the border's still going to be wide open. I talked to my buddy who's on the border. He's a border patrolman, second in command, and I don't want to say where at because then that might give it away. He asked me not to. So these people are coming, 15,000 people coming across, like almost a day on an average. And yet they can't even enforce the law. They're told not to enforce the law. And
this is a problem with the administration. It's not going to be changed until 2024. Anybody who thinks the Republicans, with their razor-thin majority in the House, they are completely helpless against the things that you're talking about. The Senate will not pass anything that they do, anything that has a conservative bent to it. And even if that were to happen, President Biden will veto it, or the Biden third term. The only solution is to have an administration change in November. And that isn't just in the White House. That means bigger margins in the House and taking the Senate back. And it's going to require Donald Trump, who is not the savior with respect to austerity measures in government spending. He added $6.7 trillion to the debt. He's going to have to do a 180-degree change in his policies with respect to the U.S. economy and spending, because he spent more than anybody in a 4-year term. Although Biden will beat him in his 4-year term. I think Biden is close to $6 trillion, or maybe a little bit over already, and we still have a year left. $374 billion they spent over and above last month, the biggest record. So it's going to take November. The border is not going to be secured. They can impeach Biden. They can impeach Mayorkas. Nothing is going to happen until November 2024. So that's the sad reality. So it's kind of like, hold on for the ride and just hope we make it to 2024.
Exactly.
And that's questionable.
But Merck, don't forget, the Republicans had the House and a Senate when President Trump's first 2 years, and they still didn't do anything. So I don't really see them doing anything.
Well,
the Republicans
that's right. That's very true. That's very true. But you know what? That's why it takes the top leadership. That's why I said Donald Trump is going to have to do a 180-degree change in his domestic policies, because he was not a fiscal conservative. Now, okay, I get it. Maybe the COVID crisis, I can only hope that his attitude and his the people he surrounds himself will exercise some restraint in spending and take us back to a pre-COVID level federal budget. I'm not holding my breath. But if we don't cut the spending, and I'm talking about real massive cuts, then it's going to be more of the same no matter what. And we don't need people to buy our U.S. treasuries. They're not. China is a net seller. Japan has their own problems. They're selling U.S. treasury to shore up cash for their struggling economy, but they don't need anybody to buy the debt, because the Federal Reserve buys it through quantitative easing. And they won't be the buyer of last resort. They will once again be the buyer of first resort. So whether or not people buy our treasuries is irrelevant for this government, because we just buy them ourselves through the Federal Reserve. And that will ignite inflation like we've never seen before. Listen, this is going to be a repeat of the 1970s with the pain of the 1930s. And people better buckle up for the ride.
Amen. Stock up on things used for trade. Hey, Merck, did you also see the Argentinian president went into the treasury and saw they were tapped out, drained? And he's actually destroying a lot of departments of the government of Argentina, and it's great. That's exactly what we need to do. Get rid of the Department of Education, the IRS, and limited government, and bring it back into the United States of America, all of our government agencies that we need, because DC is a foreign, it's not even part of our nation, our republic.
Yeah. Well, I'm not holding my breath, because Argentina is 1/10 the size of the United States, and the United States is growing all these millions of illegals that are coming across the border. I mean, it's just what is required, what is needed to do to fix this country. It is bigger than we've ever known in the history of this country. We're talking about having to deport 20 million people. If we're not willing to deport 20 million people, that's part we're going to be finished. If we're not willing to implement austerity measures that are going to hurt people, then that's going to be the end of us. And if we're not willing to cut the massive regulations that are destroying jobs and destroying manufacturing in America, if we're not willing to drill and explore our energy independence and once again become nothing will fix this country. We'll continue to go down this road to failure into the abyss.
Yeah, we'll be done for sure. I think done within the next couple of years if we don't.
Jim, your thoughts on everything?
I think it's pretty grim. First of all, no election. I know I'm repetitive, but I'm going to keep repeating it until it sinks in. The last time an election resulted in an increase in American liberty was 1800. So, good luck thinking elections are going to do anything. The Republican Party has not eliminated. The progressive era started in 1913 with the Fed, 1913-14, with the Fed, the income tax, and the war on drugs, which really was a symbol for the whole federal intervention into medicine, which it has no business being in. The Republican Party has not repealed a single major progressive program since 1913. So I don't hold much hope out for the future. I do think that the Trump wing of the party is a significant improvement over the Bush, for want of a better word, the Bush wing.
Yeah,
But-
President Trump's the greatest.
But Trump himself is if you studied him closely, he was a populist nationalist. And aside from that, had no ideology whatsoever. He's a pure pragmatist. He does have a sincere belief in nationalism and populism. He thinks that the government should do what is good for the nation of America. And he's a populist in the sense that he thinks the government should do what's good for average people. However, that's a subject of debate. Is it free trade? Is it protectionism? We don't have free trade now, by the way. We have managed corporatist trade, but is it protectionism? So just because you're in favor of what's good for average people doesn't mean that you can draw any specific conclusions, because as a libertarian, I think libertarianism is good for average people. In fact, I know it is. What Trump really needs to do, in all honesty, is something I know a few people who know Trump, but I'm not wired at all. I'm not a player or anything like that. But what I tried to do in the early days was try to get some libertarian influence into the Trump administration. This guy in Argentina, I think, is apparently a libertarian. The jury's still out on that. But if Trump would bring in some what libertarians are good at is we're good policy wonks. I mean, I can tell you what agencies to get rid of, like right now. Let's start with HUD. What the F is the government doing involved in local public housing projects? And if you know anything about HUD, it has been a complete disaster for the cities. And it is a corrupt organization. It was corrupt in its inception. And if you can't get rid of one useless agency that has nothing federal about it, it's a purely local thing. It's not constitutional. If Trump would bring in, and I do think he's going to win the election, if Trump would bring in a few libertarian policy wonks and start to cut spending and bring the troops home, I think the America First is good on foreign policy, and libertarians agree with that. The guy needs to bring in some libertarians into his administration, which he did not in the first administration, and spending got out of control. He screwed up the lockdown. He screwed up COVID. Libertarians were pretty damn good on the lockdown. I filed a lawsuit against Andrew Cuomo on May 15th of 2020. We were pretty freaking good on the lockdown. We could have told Trump this was all bullshit. So that's all I have to say about that, to paraphrase Forrest Gump.
Well said. Well said. Bill Muckler.
Hey guys, I'm sorry. I kept my Facebook tab open because that's how I communicate with Rory. And apparently somebody added me to a one of these groups or something like that. And I usually leave them right away because I don't want to go through all that. And all of a sudden, I guess that group blew up, and that's what all those notifications were. All I really had to do was click on the mute, and I would have solved the problem. But I went ahead and tried to figure out how to leave the group, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
Hey, I took some courses in statistical analysis at Mizzou. And so I kind of went, we had to do some surveys and studies and do all this kind of stuff. And there's one that came out today that said, if you're sleep deprived during the week, which most of us are, we get 5 or 6 hours of sleep, we can actually catch up on the weekends, and this will do us good. So this a big exhaustive study came out letting us know, hey, we can catch up on our sleep on the weekends. Now, here's what's interesting about this. This was all American data, but the study was made by Chinese communist scientists. What the hell are they doing with our sleep data? They've got everything. My point is, I think China is intertwined themselves and got themselves interwoven in our civilization, culture, and country that we don't even have a clue what they're getting into, because now they're even studying our sleep habits.
Yeah.
Go figure.
It's insane. It's insane
Well,
time.
with back to the elections, obviously elections don't mean anything if people don't do anything. It is possible to get the kind of people in Washington that make a difference. Calvin Coolidge ruled from was president from 1920s, 29.
23.
Yeah. I mean, he erased over almost $4 billion from the debt when we were only in the billions. Our national debt was he's the only one that has a negative number. Actually, I think Warren Harding may have decreased the national debt, but he actually did. He cut government spending before he cut taxes, and then he cut government spending again. And then on the third round, he cut taxes. So it can be done. But the problem is the American people are not willing to accept the austerity measures. And when you look at Washington and the kind of people that go to Washington, they're handicapped even by their own people. They're there to get reelected. And unfortunately, as Mitt Romney said years ago in 2012, too many people are attached to the United States government. Too many people rely on the government entitlements, and it has become impossible to turn that spigot off. So I think the best we can hope for is maybe prolonging the existence of this country. Like Hezekiah did. Israel was doomed, but Hezekiah bought some time before they went into captivity. I think it's going to take some extreme measures in Washington, apart from that, then there is going to be no hope for us fiscally. It doesn't end well. And this is a unsustainable course. This is going to be impossible to finance this country through taxes and even printed money over the next 20 years. It's going to be impossible. When you're looking at possibly $100 trillion in debt, that just doesn't work. The numbers don't work.
Yeah, we're doomed for sure. Great Depression too, like a lot of us have touched on. It's going to be one miserable ride, and but maybe that's what it's going to take to hopefully wake people up, to restore our republic, to bring things back to normal, common sense thinking and ways.
Right.
About who knows?
I think people will kind of get used to it because this is a slow, methodical change. The 1962 45 goals for Marxists in America, they're playing the long game. And I think when you look into the future, what the global economy looks like is a nationalist less world where borders don't matter, where they're just regions, and everybody kind of shares in the economy. There's massive redistribution of wealth, and there's really no sense of nationalism throughout. And people will kind of get used to that, going traveling. It's kind of what happened to Europe in the 90s. When they became the Eurozone, you no longer needed to have a passport traveling through all these countries. And now they're so totally used to it. Italians can travel to the north and to Great Britain. You can go all over Europe. You don't need a passport. You don't need any stamps. That is going to be the global movement. And as we homogenize the globe of all the people to make us all look the same, make us all act the same, with, of course, the ruling elites at the top always maintaining their own specific identity. But all the rest of us, the masses, will be so used to just this global economy, global currency, and it will be kind of this dull way of life.
Own nothing and be happy, Greg, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we'll be so used to doing, having less. Our square footage in our homes will shrink. Americans enjoy the largest square footage in the world. Per capita. You go to some countries, they're living in 700 square foot apartments, and that's large size for them. So we will just kind of shrink down and have very little, and we'll be used to it. And that is sad, because we're looking from our position now, looking forward. Imagine what this looks like to the people of the 1950s. I don't think they could imagine this. And unfortunately, it's going to be difficult to reverse course. I think the most we can do is slow it down.
Right.
Hopefully.
Right. I want to mention this. Communist dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, declared through state media on Wednesday that the launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile was necessary to clearly show what action the DPRK, North Korea, has been prepared and what option the DPRK would take when Washington makes a wrong decision against it. So he's out there threatening America again. He wants to make a move. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, these fake tough guys, and they're all over the world. They like to rattle their sabers. I don't know that he could hit the continent of Australia with his ballistic missiles. Maybe he can, but he's just trying to talk tough out there. And he did threaten that he would retaliate with nuclear weapons if the United States attacked him with nuclear weapons. Of course, he quantified that. If he gets attacked with nukes, he's going to retaliate with nukes. And obviously, as would every single country on the planet. I mean, any country that was attacked with nukes, certainly communist countries, is going to retaliate with nukes as well. So it's not like that's some revelation, but I think he's just trying to say we got nukes too. And the extent of it, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But this just goes to show you it's more reflective of the Biden administration, where his pathetic weakness, his fecklessness, is heard all around the world, from China to Iran to North Korea. And nobody respects America anymore, because how can you expect a guy that can't even utter a coherent message? How can you respect a guy who doesn't know which way to turn on a stage? You cannot. And the government or the world sees it, and they're laughing.
Yeah, Mark, Kim Jong-un couldn't even hit Chris Christie.
Yeah.
Bill, you got any thoughts?
I don't know how to follow up on that one. On the nuke thing, yeah, I think that I think he just wants to keep Korea known, and the guy's a narcissist. There's no question about it. Probably a sociopath. I thought Trump handled him very well. Trump figured out how to handle this guy, and we heard nothing about the bad coming out of North Korea until now. Biden's in, and all of a sudden we're hearing all this stuff. We didn't hear much coming out of Iran either once Trump killed off
Soleimani,
yeah. So, we've got to change this around. If we go another 4 years with a Biden-like administration in power, yeah, we're going to be in a world of hurt, no question about it.
Jim, you got any thoughts on North Korea? I mean, they've been threatening us for a while. Nothing really ever happens. They just love to, stir the pot.
I'm concerned. I was hoping that Trump would accomplish something there that nobody expected, but he didn't seem to close the deal. Maybe in his second term,
That we know of.
somehow end the Korean War, which
I mean, there is
a continuation of World War II, because the Soviets went in there right at the end of World War II. So, as a libertarian, these wars never end. We're still fighting World War I. If you look at the map closely, we're still fighting World War II. These wars never fucking end, and they never, they don't solve the ultimate problems. So I view the Korean War as a continuation of World War II.
Yeah.
Well, and that's how these global elites, military industrial complexes make their money is by wars. So we're never going to, as long as these people control or are in power, we'll always be in a war until we actually get somebody in there that doesn't want to go to war, like President Trump, who brought peace to the Middle East, who brings our troops home and protects our own borders. We'll definitely always be in a war, because like Nikki Haley, she's a neocon. She'll want to send us to war. All these politicians like to send us to war, but they never go themselves. Well, most of them anyway. And it's just, And Kim Jong-un is also, it's all just about the fear mongering. He definitely doesn't have that guy. He won't do anything. He needs China. He needs Iran. He needs those countries who hate us really bad to really do anything first before he would do anything. I don't see him doing anything.
The fact is in an imperfect world, war is inevitable, and there are evil people, and good people have to kill evil people.
Yeah.
But the problem is we don't have a criteria for which we engage in war, and the criteria should be very simple. It should be threefold, and you have to meet all three tenets. It should be in America's national security interests, it should be in America's economic security interests, and it should advance American ideals and goals or control. If it doesn't meet those three objectives, then the U.S. does best to stay out and try to use diplomatic efforts. And nothing that's going on in the world today meets those three criteria. None of them.
Well, a point I made in some of my books, this notion that the government, progressivism applies to foreign policy too. So there's domestic progressivism where, like the Great Society, the government has some amazing ability to figure out how to fix the problem in the cities. Well, that turned out to be a disaster. But the government's stupid in foreign policy too. World War I gave us communism and Nazism. So Woodrow Wilson, even though he had a PhD in political science, I believe, and was a very smart dude, he wasn't smart enough to figure out the consequences of World War I. World War II gave us communism on about 40% of the globe. So we're not really smart enough to figure out what the consequences of these wars are, which really argues for a presumption of peace unless there's dire circumstances, like when the British invaded the United States. Oh, there's a foreign army, we better fight those people. Short of that, I'd stay out of the rest of it.
Right.
Well, there were legitimate reasons in World War I. When Germany's attacking our ships and making alliances with the Mexican government against the United States, we can't be Neville Chamberlains and sit back and say there's nothing to see here, everything's going to be okay. So there are legitimate. Again, it's very simple. It's a very simple strategy. National security interests and economic security interests, and advances U.S. goals and ideals. And that's a very simple one. And there have been times throughout the world and throughout U.S. history when we have met all three of those requirements. But there have been too many times when we haven't even met one of them.
Well, we shouldn't have a president like FDR is conspiring to get us into a war that the American people did not want to be in.
Well, most American people don't even want war. Even the citizens of other countries don't even want us there. So unless, like Greg was saying, I mean, he broke it down well, if we shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Protect our own borders. That's what we need to do. We have insurrection going on through our southern border, and that is what we need to do, is protect that.
I think, when we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, an egregious attack at Pearl Harbor, I think the decision was pretty obvious that we were going to enter the war.
For sure.
When you embargo oil against Japan, that's an act of war, in my opinion. Yeah. So, again, FDR wanted to get into that goddamn war either through the Pacific or he really wanted to get involved in Europe, and Hitler... he couldn't goad Hitler into attacking us, so he goaded the Japanese. It's all bullshit, Greg. Come on. Study some revisionist history. It's all bullshit. Everything we've been taught is bullshit.
Well, our own government.
I believe there's evil in the world, and certainly the Japanese had some imperialist ideals, and you attacked our people, and you killed our soldiers, and you killed our civilians, so you brought us into the war. Now, there are issues with blockades, but that's kind of like if I say bad words to you in a bar, and you hit me over the head with a bottle and put me in a concussion, that's not justifiable response to some bad words. So their attack on Pearl Harbor, they asked for it, and when they continued down the road, they asked for to be the first country in the world to test nuclear weapons. So they could have ended it. We see it in Hamas today. They could end this war, but they choose not to. There are times when good people have to kill bad people. Otherwise, the bad people will proliferate. They will advance, and they will take over the world. We've seen it throughout human history.
In order for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. So
the United States has 40,000 troops in the Middle East. We ought to get them the hell out of there. The United States has never shown any ability to fix any problem in the Middle East. Our intervention in the Middle East has been a fucking disaster since World War I.
Just allow Israel to wipe them out.
Get the hell out of there. Get the hell out of there.
There definitely could be arguments made on both sides of this matter. Bill Muckler, your thoughts?
Well, and not only the United States has never been able to do anything in the Mideast, neither was England or Germany or anybody else. I guess France was in Lebanon, so everybody's had their shot at it, and nothing is going to stop them unless we just kill them all.
Or stay out of there. It's none of our business what happens in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, I think it's a little naive to think that Middle Eastern countries are fine with us staying out and fine with maintaining their regional influence. Anybody who thinks that Iran is comfortable with that, or China for that matter, is extraordinarily naive. These people are bent on world domination, and Muslims have no concept of mutually assured destruction. It means nothing to them. It has zero impact on them. So when they rise up, like we've been attacked 100 times by the Iranians, and we just sit back, it further emboldens them, and it emboldens the rest of the world, and it makes our allies think twice about where we are in terms of our military strength and our resolve to stop evil in the world. So
I missed this attack by Iran. What is Iran?
The Houthis have fired hundreds of missiles. There have been 100 attacks on military bases.
Surrounded by bases. We have had Iran surrounded by military bases for 50 years. When has Iran attacked the United States?
Okay, do you not know that they finance the Houthis? Do mountain men, Yemenis mountain men, do they know how to fire rockets? They obviously finance Hamas. They obviously finance Hezbollah and train them, and they obviously finance and train the Houthis. So it's a proxy war through Iran. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. That is not even arguable.
You mentioned Pearl Harbor, which was not a state; it was a colony of the United States that we grabbed. Unfortunately, when Grover the Great Cleveland skipped the term in office because he didn't want to grab it.
Yeah, 1949, but it was an American base and U.S. soldiers.
What state?
I didn't say it was a state. It was an American base with U.S. soldiers.
It wasn't a state. It was a fucking colony. What state of the United States has Iran attacked? Because I'm missing it.
I didn't say they attacked states. They attacked bases. They attacked the United States. Look, if you live on a base and you're born on a base, you're a citizen of the United States.
We have 40,000 troops. I checked it out because of this research.
That's another subject. But Iran has attacked the United States.
Why the hell? And Trump, although Trump was relatively good keeping us out of any new major conflicts, he was monkeying around in Syria, which was a total fucking disaster that Obama and Hillary got us in. And Trump's there. Oh, let's get involved in Syria. Get the hell. We have troops in Syria right now. Why? It's insane. Get them out.
I mean, our own government has committed war against us, and we're not doing anything about it. So, I mean,
guys, I want to bring up here. We're talking about the troops. There's a new survey, new statistics that have come out. The number of homeless veterans rose over 7% in the last year. It's the highest jump ever tracked. Yeah. Good Lord.
And also we have the lowest active military too, participation.
You have thoughts on this, Jim?
No, I want to let the veterans speak to this because I do not understand the veteran homeless problem. So hopefully they can explain that better.
Bill, you have thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, a lot of veterans come back and they're not only damaged physically but mentally, and many of them are the ones who end up being homeless. And they choose to do this because they feel like they need to still live in the bush, that they can't. They don't want to assimilate in society, and we're not really doing a very good job of taking care of our veterans when they come back. We don't. We may give them some care to give them new limbs or something like that, but we don't help our veterans at all coming back from the trauma of the war. And when you speak about that, a lot of people don't understand. And I wasn't over there in the Mideast, so I can only tell you from what guys have told me. They're sitting next to their best buddy in a Humvee or some kind of a vehicle, and they're just chatting away. And this guy's a best friend, and all of a sudden, a split second later, this guy's dead, and his brains and everything are blown all over him. That's pretty traumatic. That's pretty hard to get over, and so you can't just dismiss these guys and say, hey, get over it, or, it's shell shock or something like that. So these guys have a hell of a hard time, and I do a lot of work with veterans organizations, have a very difficult time getting back into society. And we're not doing them any good. We're not helping them when they come back. Hell, uh, we just don't give them any support at all. And the VA in many cases won't even allow them benefits because they can't prove that there's anything really wrong with them. And a lot of guys, they don't want to accept it. They don't want to get on any kind of medication. They don't want to. They don't want the VA, controlling them or what they think is controlling them, and so they end up, being the homeless. For example, when I was in Brevard County before I moved over here, I was on the executive board of the Veterans Memorial Center over there, and we knew every homeless vet in Brevard County, a county of almost 500,000 people with about 80,000 vets. We knew where every one of them were. We had guys that actually went out and took them MREs and took them bottled water and checked on them, and so forth. So, but we were volunteers and we were donating our own time and money to do this for veterans. The government wasn't doing anything for them. And these are the kind of guys that we read about. They're homeless, and it's getting worse. And where are we directing all of our money now? We're spending $500 a night for illegal invaders.
Yeah, because they're kicking the veterans out of the hotels.
But where our vets live, they don't have anything. And so we got, like this Tunnels for Towers. I see their ads on all the time and so forth. There's some organizations like that trying to do some things. A good friend of mine, a Texas Aggie grad, a veteran, he's trying to build a string of homes, got some land and building homes strictly for veterans, that over in Brevard County. So there's a lot of things going on, but the government doesn't value veterans the way George and Brian and myself value them. That's for sure, and that's a real big problem with it. Another problem is the suicide among veterans. That is continued to increase, and we don't have any idea how many veterans are committing suicide. There's a number out called 22, the 22 a day. But that doesn't take in statistics from every state. That's only some part of the states. And a lot of families won't allow suicide to be put on their their children who are veterans on their death certificates because they think it's kind of a stigma against them and so forth. So, pardon me, we don't know enough of what's going on as far as veterans are concerned. What we do know is our government doesn't give a shit about them and doesn't value the veterans and the service that they provided for us.
That's right. Yeah. And Bill, also, veterans are being kicked out of hotels for the illegal immigrants as well. So that's why there's a lot of homelessness up as well. And you touched on a lot of good stuff. Reefs Across America just did their thing on December 16th, laying the wreaths on the tombs of in the national cemeteries. That's where my family is. My brother, my dad, my grandfather, and my grandma, they're all laid to rest. So God bless them. And I hope people went and just honored their loved ones there. But we've been involved in that. In fact, this year, because I'm over here, I wasn't involved in that. We did Wreaths for America. We also did the Missing in America project over there. We were one of the ones that really helped get it started at the Cape Canaveral National Cemetery, which is a new and beautiful resting place for our veterans in Florida, where actually we were going around to funeral homes in Florida and collecting the urns that were sitting on shelves of World War II veterans, Korean War veterans that nobody claimed them, and doing the research to verify whose remains they were and everything, so we could give them an honorable interment at the Cape Canaveral National Cemetery. We're doing that 4 times a year, every 3 months, doing about 20, 25 at a time, with beautiful ceremonies and everything like that. Hey, Bill, you touched on Tunnel for Towers, though. They
Yeah.
only do if you're killed in combat. Because I just had a lady on my show about a month ago. Her husband was killed by an illegal immigrant here in Florida, the Tampa Bay area. And she reached out to the organization. They said, well, he wasn't killed in combat. He was killed here on American soil, so they couldn't help her. So they only deal with combat wounded or combat killed veterans.
Well,
And they do the firefighters and law enforcement are killed in 9/11. So, but that's just an example of
Yeah, I was just letting you know.
private organization. Yeah. The fact is, why have all these wounded warriors and all these different organizations? Why have they cropped up and grown to take the place of what our government should have done in the first place? And don't tell me we don't have enough money. We already spent $34 trillion more than we brought in national debt to do what? What we got to show for it? We don't have beautiful cities or wonderful roads or great internet or anything else to show for it. We got crap.
It's about letting the veterans die. They don't want us to, take care of us. They send us to war. Like you stated, we get broken down, come home, and we're never the same. But they just don't care, like you said. Anyway, Greg needs.
We're about to wrap up here in a couple minutes. Go ahead, go Greg.
Well, first of all, I'll say that homelessness for veterans is very much like homelessness for everybody else. There's an extreme amount of mental illness and substance abuse, compounded PTSD. All these things are factors. But what people don't realize is, there's this that we are an all volunteer force. And many people come into the military for socioeconomic reasons. So if you're kind of strained and you just want a job and you never really make it, a lot of people in the military, certainly over the last 20, 30 years, come into because it's a way to get a paycheck. So if they don't have this great foundation in childhood and socioeconomic strength going into the military, they're much more likely coming out of the military to kind of go back and drift into that and eventually become homeless, especially when they're impacted by all these other things and they drift into the substance abuse and the drug abuse and the PTSD and all the other things. So it's an anomaly among with veterans, but it's explainable. And it's also a factor when you look at the pay grades. I've never met a homeless military officer. And it's a big difference. Obviously, the pay grades from the lower enlisted ranks to the officer ranks and the seniors. So it clearly has a link to socioeconomic status. So, if you're not sound and strong going into the military is not going to fix your personality. It'll provide for you and sustain you for a little while. But when you get out of the military, you're going to resort to those old habits, which could be fractured and cause you to go into these areas, with substance abuse.
Because they're used to being told what to do, right, Merck? And then
partially, but you get, you have housing. You don't have a problem with housing. Maybe you grew up you're in your parents' trailer, and you didn't have much of a prospect in getting a job out, in yourself. So you go in the military, and then you get out of the military. You don't have the health care. You don't have the paycheck. You don't have the housing. You're not living in the barracks. All these things are gone, and they're not capable of adjusting. So I don't think that it's this phenomenon. I think it's very explainable. And unfortunately, I don't think it rests on the hands of the U.S. government. I think it rests on individuals. Look, if we're not preparing our children, just like I do, to enter into the military as strong, solid citizens, but if we're going to, really alter what our military is about and who we enter in and what kind of people and the trannies and the sodomites and all the rest of it, we're really disintegrating our military anyway. But, really it starts in the homes. And when people grow up in their strong foundation in their home as children, they're going to go in the military, they're going to serve their country, and they're going to come out and be productive citizens. But, if they don't go into the military solid and strong, they're not going to come out strong and solid.
Right. And before we take off here, it was just mentioned in a report that Ukraine votes to legalize marijuana to help ease the stress from the war with Russia. I mean, I'm all for it, man. Legalize it everywhere. Obviously, this is not going to take away the pain from the war, but,
I mean, Big Pharma is allowed to drug everybody up and kill them. Might as well let a plant be illegal. I mean, it's a plant.
What do you think about this?
And guess who's going to ship them the dope?
China.
No, the United States.
I know. But
pretty interesting how this is coming into place. I mean, it's kind of irrelevant in regards to, I mean,
So they're going to get tanks, missiles, and baskets full of marijuana.
I don't know how this helps the war. I mean, this, obviously, I understand how, people can relax, but this is not going to change anything. So much damage has been done. This seems like another distraction.
It'll make them feel better about the fact that they got their asses kicked by the Russians.
Yeah, I don't think it's really a good.
They'll be dead smoking weed. They'll be dead.
I'm a health nut, so legal, yes. I recommend people not.
Yeah, maybe if they're high when they're about to die, it won't be as bad of a death.
Well, I don't think that's a strong indicator that Ukraine is doing well. When they're not wanting to drug up their people to deal with the stress, it doesn't exactly sound like they're doing real good over there.
I know they're getting killed. I know they're getting destroyed.
Yeah, for sure.
I never said they're doing well.
No, I'm just saying in general, this idea, we need marijuana. I mean, the war's not going too well for them when they're, wanting
their anxiety must be through the roof, man. Can you imagine how much anxiety these fuckers have?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
No, it's just, the Russians are coming in drinking vodka. Ukrainians might as well be smoking dope.
Do Ukrainians drink a lot? Do they drink as much as Russians? No, probably not.
I'm sure they do.
What are
They're all the same people.
I think it's vodka, right?
Yes,
vodka.
they are, Greg.
Yeah.
They are.
Isn't it vodka?
Yeah.
I think vodka is the thing over there, right, Greg?
Yes.
Yeah. Bill Muckler, you got any thoughts on this?
I think they both relish their vodka, and I think they both drink copious amounts of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Merry Christmas, everybody. And I hope everybody has a blessed Christmas season and a prosperous New Year. If we're not, are we going to be on next week?
Yeah, we'll be on next week.
Okay.
What does everybody think about the war going on with Ukraine and Russia? Do we see any end in sight? Jim, your thoughts?
No.
It's over. Ukraine lost. They just don't want to admit it while Biden's running for re-election because it'll hurt his campaign.
So you think they'll make some sort of announcement after the election about this whole scenario? Basically, how it's coming to an end?
They'll keep slaughtering Ukrainians in a pointless war so Biden gets reelected, they hope.
Well, let's say Biden gets reelected. Do you still think the war is done or only if Trump gets elected?
They'll negotiate. It's going to be over either way. It'll be negotiated.
Yeah.
It's over,
What do you think, Bill?
I think Zelensky's coming out with two $75 million yachts. So anything else that happens, who knows?
What does Greg think?
I think as long as the United States is sending them billions of dollars, the war is going to be prolonged.
And do we know anything about Taiwan? Because there was just a new report that came out saying Xi of China told Biden recently that he plans to take Taiwan, and Biden did nothing about it. Doesn't care. It seems like
he's bought and paid for by China. He's not going to do anything.
So I mean, there's still what, 9 days? How many days left in the year? 9 days left in the year. They could still take Taiwan. There was always that report for a long time that they were going to do it before the year's over.
That was until the economy started imploding. It's not something they want to do militarily. They play the long game, and we talked about this before. They prefer just to be able to absorb them, just like they did in Hong Kong, and they're going to move to Taiwan. But they still got to strengthen their economy. They got to strengthen themselves and shield themselves against U.S. sanctions. It's coming. They prefer to be able to do it peacefully without attacks because it's not going to come. It won't come at any small cost to China either. If they want to go in there militarily. So they want to avoid that at all costs. But eventually, when the options are peaceful options are off the table, then it will come to a military exercise.
Yeah, because China's military is actually being trained to kill compared to ours, who's being trained to know what a dick or a vagina is. So,
Bill, I'll go to you.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the Chinese New Year is when? January 31st? So maybe it's going to be by then. Who knows? I just don't see China taking over Taiwan in the near future because I think they've got too many economic problems as it is right now. I think that would That's probably something that they like to threaten us with, but is probably not their number one priority or goal.
Did you guys hear about this before we take off? A report revealed that the House investigated a second gay sex scandal as Washington, D.C. reels from the initial emergence of a graphic pornographic video filmed by a Senate aide. Apparently, there's another one going around. Did anybody hear about this?
Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of them actually, because a lot of them are really gay, like Lindsey Graham and stuff. I'm sure there's tons of them, but to finally see them come out is good. I mean,
Crazy. What do we think, Greg? You think there's a lot of them?
Is George Santos in one of them?
Oh, I don't doubt it. Interesting stuff. All right, Brian, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can get involved.
And real quick to that, that guy that got caught in the Senate that got fired, he said, "Oh, I didn't disrespect my workplace." But anyway.
Yeah, and he claimed homophobia, and he cried like a little victim. And he took no accountability.
Sorry. Anyway, I had to say that real quick. But you can find me right here on NexGen Live, Censorless TV, YouTube, Fascist Book, soon to be Instagram if I can figure out how to get live on that. But again, I'm grateful to be here each and every day. I thank God for allowing me to be here in this greatest time in world history to stand on the truth and to fight. Remember what Christmas is about. I know Jesus Christ's birthday isn't Christmas, but we do celebrate him, and it is about giving. It's about love. It's about being grateful for what you have, the family you have. It's not the materials that you have. It's the friends and the family. So you never know. This could be your last one with all of you. Like my family's all passed away. I do have cousins left, thank God, and an aunt, but really appreciate what you have. Be grateful. Count your blessings every day. Give him all the honor and glory. And I want to wish each and every single one of the men on this panel a very blessed Christmas and a happy New Year. Hopefully we see y'all next week, Lord willing.
Yes.
And happy New Year, everybody. Buckle up. 2024 is coming up. Woo! It's going to be a hell of a ride, as Ric Flair would say. Woo!
Bill Muckler.
Hey, Merry Christmas to everybody on the panel and all of our viewers. I hope everybody has a blessed Christmas and a very prosperous and a wonderful 2024 and New Year. So anyway, you can find me any place. I'm all over, spread around just like you know what.
Jim.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody. I'm on Facebook, Twitter. I got some books on Amazon, and I'm going to do this GOP scorecard live stream on January 1st. So should be so fun.
Probably enough, right?
Greg.
Yeah, getting ready to launch the new Minutes with Merck, a 5-minute show that will be hard-hitting, impactful on a single current event on this network and on my Facebook and YouTube channels.
Excellent. Well, everybody, another episode of the NexGen Live in the books. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. We will see you all next week. Until then, I'm Rory Sauter. God bless. Much love. Cheers, everybody.